Hey everyone, welcome to the February ASES webinar. Today we'll be covering an all-careers approach to education, connecting environmental and energy literacy with all careers. A reminder that our next webinar will be on Thursday, March 19th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and next month's webinar will cover a recording of the Solar 2019 speakers from the Women in Solar Energy Forum and Luncheon at last year's conference. You can register now. Head to ases.org/webinars. I also want to remind everyone to please join ASES for free priority access to our webinar series. ases.org/join is where you can join as a new member, or ases.org/renew if you have a previous ASES membership you need to renew. All webinars will cost a nominal fee for anyone who is not an ASES member. I'd also like to remind everyone that our 49th annual National Solar Conference, Solar 2020 Renewable Energy Vision, will be in Washington, D.C. this summer, June 23rd to the 26th. Registration is now open. Early bird registration is in effect. You can visit ases.org/conference for more information and to register now for some amazing rates to attend the conference. Now, please let me introduce you to today's presenter, Martin Ogle. He is an ASES Life member whose background is in wildlife biology. Thank you, Martin, for being here and presenting this webinar for us today.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm really happy to be able to share this idea with ASES members, and I imagine a few others, and call it an all-careers approach to education, and subtitled Connecting Environmental and Energy Literacy with All Careers. So what we're going to do today is start off with a few introductory comments and look at why this idea, why do we need to look into this way of looking at education. I'll have a section about environmental literacy, how do living systems work and how do systems fit in, kind of as a very condensed version of the content of this idea. And then some case studies and other ideas that we need to get across to especially teenagers. I'll explain why I'm saying that age group right now, or soon. And then how are we advancing this all careers idea? And that means me and others here in Boulder County in the Front Range of Colorado, but how might we advance it to a much larger audience? So I'm going to start off with a overview that you can see on your screen here, just to really set the stage right off the bat. The all careers approach seeks to make explicit, and I put emphasis on that, explicit connections between environmental knowledge, concern, and all careers, as opposed to just that small segment of the economy made up of what we currently understand as environmental careers. And the purpose of this initiative is at least threefold: to empower young people, especially in high school, with a solid sense of how they can contribute to the creation of a green, sustainable economy, no matter their skills, aptitudes, and therefore career directions. Second, to give these young people knowledge of environmental principles and how they can be used in a wide variety of ways. I often word this as how do natural systems work, or how do earth systems work, and then how do human systems fit in. Third is to inspire young people to make such connections, and increasingly on their own, to intentionally create the green, sustainable economy of the future, rather than leaving it to chance. And I'll say that that's what I observe kind of our society is doing now, is we're leaving to chance that our young people can create and continue to create with us a green economy, rather than doing it explicitly and on purpose. So I want to start with a flood story, of course. This is actually a secondhand story from a friend who had a friend who was a high school teacher along the Mississippi River. And when the 1992 flood hit is when this story comes from. The teacher was just about to quit being a high school teacher because he said that his students were apathetic, didn't care about anything, they didn't care about learning when that flood hit. And lo and behold, he went out to work on the sandbagging operation in the town, and there he found many of his students all actively sandbagging to help save the community. And he said it made him realize that his students weren't apathetic. It's just that he and his co-educators had not provided something of great inspiration and meaning to students, and therefore their education seemed rather disconnected from what they do. So I have to ask the question, what noble cause can youth be inspired by today? In general, and to relate their education to. So we need for all ages, but especially young people, to start thinking about how we're going to actually create a green economy. But in addition to that, it will provide the kind of inspiration that all of us need, and especially our high school students. These high school students are we're at Fossil Ridge High School in Fort Collins, Colorado, and they pretty much single-handedly, with their faculty mentor, produced the Environmental Leadership Summit, which was held in April of the last 3 years. And one of the producers of this, one of the students, wrote that we learned during this planning that the young adults in Colorado are hugely underutilized, but the potential that this age group holds for making a huge change in their own communities is incredible. Our goal is to deliver a message of inspiration and hope, and that they are doing to an ever increasing degree. In fact, this year they're doing it in conjunction with Colorado State University on the Colorado State campus. So for anyone who lives in the Front Range of Colorado or anywhere in the state, I'd encourage you to check this out and maybe encourage your high schools in the area to attend. Last year's, they've had over 300 people on a day off school. Well, if you go to their Climate Leadership Summit website, the first part of their homepage, what you see in front of you is part of their description of how they're attracting students to attend. Our aim is to translate environmental knowledge and concern into action that supports a new economy through all of our careers and activities in the future. And so this is one place in Colorado where this theme of all careers is being put to great use. So why all careers? If we all are wanting to achieve and create a sustainable world, then I would make the case in this presentation that we need to have something like what I'm presenting here to you, an all careers theme. When I present it to high school students, I usually immediately switch to a phrase something like this. Sustainable is a word that's been around for decades now, but I think some other descriptor, starting with terms like these, are what high school students really want to achieve. And so I'll posit that if we want to create that healthy, thriving, and beautiful world, that we really do need to connect environmental knowledge and concern, because otherwise we're just hoping that we can create such a thing. It won't happen by accident, in other words. So right now, there's a certain set of careers that a lot of people think of or explicitly know as environmental careers. But if you take a little bit of time and just think in your head about what an environmental career is, most high school students will answer this question with things like a forester, a ranger, a naturalist, or an environmental scientist. But that, of course, leaves out essentially almost the entire economy, because that's such a small part of it. Well, I'm on the board of the Colorado Alliance for Environmental Education, and there's a 4- or 5-year-old effort now called the Careers in Natural Resource Initiative, inspiring the next generation. And you can see pictured there, it's mostly those kind of professions we just mentioned. But there is a move in their handbook and other webinars and things they do to include the fields of energy, water, and food. And of course, that is a great start towards expanding towards all careers. But even those put together really are a small part of the overall economy. So the thought is that unless all the jobs in an economy are green and doing things in a different way, well, we really don't have a green economy, just if a small slice of people are doing something differently and more green. So hence the all careers idea. We need an all careers approach to first inspire and kind of put the thought in everyone's minds that all of our careers need to be green, and then we need to go about providing the content and training, etc. So one basic environmental principle, if you take an ecology class, for instance, you'll hear of limiting factors, and it's not unique to ecology, but in ecology, it might be that you might have a perfect situation for a species to occur in an area, for instance. But if one limiting important factor is missing, well, that species won't be there. And I think that's the case with our educating young people today. There are many case studies and resources for connecting environmental principles with new ways of doing practically everything. But I always ask when I'm doing programs if they're getting those kind of case studies and resources. And almost to a person all the time, the answer is no. Career readiness efforts, almost all, do not contain a message or a value statement, let alone the content needed for making these kinds of all careers connections. And career counselors rarely convey the possibility that careers beyond that narrowly conceived environmental careers descriptor can be part of creating a green economy. So these things are missing, and therefore it is a limiting factor to our ability to create a sustainable economy. So what we're trying to do here is really raise that level, plug up those gaps, so to say, and provide at least one of the most important limiting factors to being able to create that sustainable economy of the future. I'd mentioned Colorado Alliance for Environmental Education. They and other organizations have produced this Colorado Environmental Education Plan. And in it, there is some mention of how this kind of environmental literacy is necessary. They say graduates with a strong foundation in environmental education have a variety of job and career opportunities, and Colorado is one of the nation's leaders in promoting a green job industry. So at least a conceptual link is being made in some places. And the most powerful one I've seen so far, at least at a state level, is called a Blueprint for Environmental Literacy, educating every California student in, about, and for the environment. But in that document, you'll find, if you look it up, statements like this: by achieving environmental literacy for all California students, we can effectively prepare them for a range of college and career pathways. In fact, while jobs in California's overall economy grew by 12% from 1995 to 2010, employment in the state's green economy grew by 109%. Ensuring that students attain environmental literacy is also a critical investment in California's future workforce. Now, I think that's pretty powerful realizations and statements, although in this case, they still don't think of all jobs in economy as necessarily needing to be green. Some of the goals in that same blueprint: they want to establish a state level advisory council that provides common messaging across the state regarding the value and importance of environmental literacy to formal education and career readiness. And then they want to showcase ways of utilizing curricular materials, local environmental literacy opportunities and connections with resource professionals to highlight real world examples. And these kinds of goals certainly, in my mind, are part and parcel of a all careers initiative. Also, something that might be of interest to some of you on the webinar today, you can look up this Green 360 Career Catalyst, and it also comes out of California, and it encourages students first to know yourself. You take a kind of a personality test of sorts, although it's a really interesting one, and then you connect with others. And what they mean there is that they list hundreds and hundreds of jobs that they consider green. And it's a great start down this road, but two things that are missing: it's still not all jobs, and two, in this particular website, there's no direct link. In other words, you don't learn environmental principles on this website. You just take your concern and interest going forward. So a new section here, and by the way, we'll have a chance where folks can ask some questions, and I'll ask you some as well. There's a chat room in this webinar that's available for you to start jotting down questions if you like. How do living systems work, and how do human systems fit in? And I call it, these are the patterns we need to highlight for teenagers. And I say patterns because a book that I'll refer you to is called A Deliberate Pause, Entrepreneurship and Its Moment in Human Progress. And the author, Larry Robertson, starts off by making the point that entrepreneurship isn't a business term. He's from a business background, but he carefully outlines how entrepreneurship to him is innate human creativity. And he says that there's patterns that he finds in innately innately creative people, that they all express having taken some deliberate pause, whether that be a retreat or a sabbatical or something like that, to notice the patterns and needs in the world, to fit one's own skills and aptitudes into making a world a better place. And so when I think, as say, both just a person looking at the world, but with my background of wildlife biology and earth system, I feel like we need to start at the mega pattern where we human beings are a part, in fact, a seamless continuum, I often say, of Earth's living systems. And this view of Earth from space at night just reminds us that our energy use in particular just shines out of this living system and reminds us that we're a part of it. The atmosphere could be considered analogous to a cell membrane, the very first things we learn about in Biology 101, and understanding how the atmosphere is like a cell membrane allows us to see how everything under that atmosphere is one living system. I use these kinds of images sometimes to remind us that life works the same at the micro and the macro level. So a marsh and a human intestine both have huge amounts of surface area for the exchange of gases and nutrients. And a river delta is rather similar in appearance to capillaries. And in a system, they're both places where various materials, often nutrients or gases, are laid down and then picked up again. Another mega pattern I try to get people to think about is how, if you do believe in the findings of Earth system science, then really everything about us, including our minds and how we think, are part and parcel, a seamless continuum of the living system. And I've used the term geosapiens to convey this. Well, I won't go on too much more here, other than to say that in one of the recent issues of Solar Today, I do have an article in there called Geosapiens, and this would form some of the underpinnings of this idea of needing to understand the living system and fit our human systems in. So I'll end this discussion here, but refer you to that article. Another way of visualizing this would be that we need all these kinds of jobs and more to become part of and integrally related to each other as a green economy, and that this red cloud here is kind of the sum total of ways in which we would design new jobs and retrofit existing ones of the future to design that green economy. So at this point, I'll check in with you, pause a little bit, and ask you to consider these 3 questions for yourself, and or if we have a chance to discuss it a little bit. But I'd ask, is there a need for an all careers approach as I'm starting to describe here? In other words, do you agree with me or not that this is a big missing link? Second, are these connections being made in a significant or meaningful way, or in fact, are they not for high school students in particular? And then if not, how do we proceed to provide the connections? And maybe you can just think about it and jot down your own ideas, and I'm going to share a few with you as we go along. So again, I'll just pause for about 15 seconds here while you consider those, and if you want to put some of those things in the chat room. Okay. So a second element of environmental literacy, some case studies and content. I use these case studies, many of them that you'll see here, in various programs that I've done with, now going on about 25 high school groups and some public groups. And I've got to say, my favorite so far was to the state conference of the DECA Business Club and also the Future Business Leaders of America. Those young people took the kinds of case studies that I'm showing you to great heart, and we had great discussions both during and after these presentations. So some of you may know William McDonough, who's sometimes known as the Green Dean. He's at the University of Virginia, and both through his book Cradle to Cradle and also through his own work, he talks about the transformation of human industry through ecologically intelligent design. And one of the things I like about using this as a case study is that he long ago, I think close to 30 years ago now, highlighted 3 environmental principles that he feels like always have to be used in the design of systems. One is, even back then, he was talking about using daily solar income. In other words, our renewable energy. He therefore equates fossil fuels and others as our savings account, and just like we wouldn't use up our savings account in our own families or businesses, we've got to rely on our daily income of energy. Second, he kind of coined the term waste equals food. Everything is a resource for something else. And it's really a design principle where we eliminate the concept of waste. So everything that's produced from a process or manufacturing or anything has to be pre-planned to be used as the raw material for something else. And finally, celebrate diversity. And this one I find tremendously interesting. If you take an ecology course, the value of diversity of a system in terms of both the animals and plants, but overall processes going on in an ecosystem are heavily stressed, of course. And he did mean that in large part. What is your diversity of flora and fauna and climate and soil type, etc.? But he was also including the diversity of human thought and culture, because he recognized that we're a seamless part of the places that we evolved out of. So just as an example, using daily solar income, he worked with Oberlin College in Ohio, and helped with Professor David Orr to produce this Center for Environmental Studies that has a net zero energy budget through the use of solar. You can see here pictured on the left, and it's still one of the quote unquote greenest buildings in the United States. In a recent speech that Professor Orr gave at Claremont McKenna College, it was called Hot Careers in a Warming World. He stressed that renewable energy was going to be one of the biggest needed career areas in the future, but went to great pains to say that we also need finance experts and artists and musicians and architects and farmers, basically making the point that everyone and everything that we do has to be part of that new system of the future. If you combine ideas of energy along with this waste equals food idea, McDonough also worked with the Interface Carpet Company. And you've probably seen these square modular carpets all over the place. There's probably some companies that aren't Interface Carpet that make these now, but they're the ones that started it. And the idea here was that, and by the way, still over 95% of carpet goes to landfills, but that shouldn't be so. And so they worked to design a system where both the base and the upper part of the carpet were made out of materials that were recyclable or compostable. So if you had say a base made out of some organic material, it becomes composted. But the upper part is made out of inorganic chemicals that were designed to be able to be recycled and made into new carpet. And then if you have a square, if you have a damaged area of your carpet, you can just take up that 1 or 2 squares rather than replacing the whole carpet. And this is such a common sense approach, but it's still not being used in most carpet manufacturing. If you combine all these and add in the Celebrate Diversity in that same building on the Oberlin campus, there's a living machine that handles the sewage treatment within the building, so they don't have to pump it out at great expense to the community where it's treated somewhere else. After it goes through these tanks, it re-enters the toilet flushing process in this building. And the originator of the living machines idea in the United States is John Todd. And again, decades ago, he talked about ecology as the basis for design, and that this should be the new economic order. And then he says that Earth stewardship becomes the larger framework in which ecological design and technologies exist. And the question that I have is, are these decades-old ideas, themes, and questions and content being taught to high school students, or anyone else for that matter, but especially young people preparing for their careers? And the answer I see everywhere is no. One last example, careers and the nitrogen cycle. If you take a biology class in high school even, let alone college, you'll see diagrams like this. This one is from the 1980s, and it's all correct as it goes. The arrows and components are all correct, but they leave out big parts of the nitrogen cycle. So for instance, in the 90s and 2000s, you started getting most nitrogen cycle illustrations, including lightning and volcanoes, just because we needed to incorporate them because they're huge parts of the way that nitrogen moves through the living system. Well, in the 2000s, I found this on some college notes in an ecology class, and they included fertilizer factories. And by that point in history, it had to be included because of the fact that human beings around the late 90s surpassed all other elements of natural processes in terms of the nitrogen cycle. So we make up more than 50% of the nitrogen cycle currently on Earth. And so I put on the screen for your contemplation a square in Amsterdam where these men are relieving themselves and giving relief to our Earth systems, because there's a company called Green Urine, and they originally wanted to capture the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium contained and pissed away literally in urine to use on the green roofs of the city that they were already leading the world in. They found that it works so well that they literally farm out the urine to farms in the area to substitute for the fossil fuel-based nitrogen fertilizers that are currently used. Well, here in our own country, in Brattleboro, Vermont, there's a company called the Rich Earth Institute, and the woman in green, Kim Nace, started it with a partner, and you can see their tagline is fertilizer from urine, clean rivers, sustainable farms, and they are doing all sorts of work with universities and with research institutes to field test the use of dilute human urine, and they're finding that it works just as well as fossil fuel-based nitrogen fertilizers. And in their efforts to make this work in the whole system, they have to do outreach, they have to have engineers working with them, they have to get grassroots participation, and notably they're working very closely with the Vermont legislature to try to make the way, pave the way for these new kinds of technologies. So there's a heck of a lot of careers tied up in this fairly small example. In these programs, I do other examples like talk about biomimicry, which really can touch on and does touch on many, many different careers. Give examples like this young girl in India that won a nationwide contest to produce a human-powered washing machine that now she's working with the Hitachi Corporation to mass produce and distribute in India. And then there's whole ranges of careers tied to chemistry, so I highlight the Green Chemistry Journal. So this is all information that's waiting to become part of our educational process. So William McDonough says that design is the first signal of human intention. And so I say let's intentionally design our approach to educating young people to empower them to change and create their own future. Okay, our last section here is how do we advance this all careers idea? I start off by pointing out an advocate that we have who has talked about this. You may or may not know of Richard Louv, who wrote a book back in 2005 called Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. And it launched a major reinvigoration of efforts to get kids outside and away from totally indoor learning situations and away from screens, etc., in order not only to have better health, but to learn how the world works. Well, in his 2011 book, he started off with that same theme, but then said that we need two additional things, otherwise this idea of getting outside won't really help. One is we need a 21st century story, a whole new idea of what progress means and what we are shooting for. And then his second additional item was in fact this very thing, this all careers idea. He labeled it making a living in a life. And here's some quotes from his book. Young adults have always been drawn to the possibility of creating a new and better world. Everything in the coming decades must change. We'll need new sources of energy, new types of agriculture, new urban design, and new kinds of schools, workplaces, and healthcare. Whole new careers will emerge that have yet to be named. So drawing upon pretty famous folks who are already our advocates is one way. The second thing is we do need to become literate in all things environmental and especially energy. Energy is just the cornerstone of everything we do, especially in modern society, and we're heavily, heavily dependent on huge inputs of energy. We've got to first understand that, and as I'm sure many of you on this webinar already either work on or know, translate that over to our society. At a park that I worked at for 27 years in Northern Virginia, we took the idea of the Zia sun symbol, that all life cycles, including human beings, run on the power of the sun, this being an over 800-year-old story, and first had high school students make this garden you see in front of you, and much of it was an Eagle Scout project, which of course is one of the ways in which Boy Scouts talk about career readiness. We worked with the solar energy company to put in various solar features in our park, and we combine those sometimes with job training programs. We worked with the Career Center in Arlington, Virginia, and they produced this little green house. This is at the beginning stages, as you can see, where they added in all sorts of tiny prototype efficient appliances and lighting, etc. And they took it around to schools during the summer, or during the school year, but during the summer, brought it to the park that I worked at, where all of our campers got a chance to really become intimately familiar with it. And we had a sculpture put in that connoted some of these ideas, where the yellow is incoming solar energy that runs all the cycles of life, and it goes through into the ground to show that they're all connected, and then all leaves as heat. And the sculptor herself, that's another career, and she worked very closely with us to say, how are we going to best and most whimsically and aesthetically convey these ideas. Another environmental principle is the negative feedback loop, and any biologist or engineer will say, yep, this is how a system works. And in a way, it's the whole idea behind the yin-yang symbol, and it's been expressed through the ages by many cultures through metaphors and art. So our artists and writers and communicators can take up this cause. And so can our economists. Maybe this one's the most important career of all, where we need to envision a circular economy, a regenerative economy, other ways of defining our success in ways that are compatible with Earth's living systems. Right now, we're starting a list, or we've started a list, it's quite long now actually, of ways that this all careers idea could be advanced. And we will send you this after the webinar is over. And it includes things like including environmental principles in as many classes as possible, but especially business and engineering. Bringing business principles and vision to environmental science classes. Making science fair themes with awards, this all careers idea. Making the all careers approach a big part of all of our educational organizations, not just schools, but land and conservation organizations, educational or environmental education organizations, etc. And training career counselors and mentors to communicate this theme and some of the content. And there's this list that we'll send you that has many, many more. Participating in this initiative in the Boulder County and Front Range of Colorado area, the Colorado Youth Congress, the Cottonwood Institute, the Poudre School District, a couple elementary and middle school programs in Louisville, Colorado, which is where I live. And then the Parent Engagement Network, which is an organization in Boulder County that seeks to provide parents with the skills for helping their students do well, not only in school, but in the future, has taken up this theme and cause quite a bit as well. And just one example, the Cottonwood Institute, they explore problem-based learning solutions, and they explore in it inherently already a wide range of careers that are part of those solutions. And they ask for career stories of people at the sites where they take field trips, and will be using all careers language increasingly in a new curricula they're developing this summer, and will help develop and use an all careers kit that we're going to try to distribute to Colorado schools. One last thought, another environmental principle is that of chemistry, is that of catalysts. And a catalyst is a chemical that doesn't participate actively in the chemical reaction in terms of its raw materials and outcomes, but makes a chemical reaction happen faster. And I believe that even just the message of an all careers approach in education could allow us to transform especially high school education, but education at all levels, to produce that elusive and sustainable economy that we're all hoping for in the future. So to wrap up then, I'll state what this all careers approach is in a different way, which was actually worded by one of the communications people at the Boulder Valley School District. And they said it demonstrates to students, especially in high school, that it's possible to use environmental and energy principles and understanding in all careers, and to empower them to take this approach as they enter the work world. So with that, I conclude the formal part of my presentation, and we can have a brief exchange here to the extent that people have questions or thoughts and ideas. We see here, if you're looking in the questions and chat room, someone says, yes, it's needed. Definitely needed. Maybe we can expand that one there. Next one down. There. Definitely needed. Connections not necessarily being made at university level. Maybe easier to make connections to energy versus environment. Interesting, yeah. And since I do believe that energy is underpinning everything that we do, I certainly concur with that. At the nature center that I worked at in Virginia, by the time I left, the whole first floor of our nature center was called the Energarium, and it was to understand nature through the lens of energy, and energy through the lens of nature. So I think that inherently we can kind of wrap the whole environment, the living system up in this, but as a single word and as a single issue, energy is where it's at. One of our participants has said, should we perhaps be considering an all industry approach rather than assume all careers have green directionality, that we question those industries that do not contribute to the efficiency or betterment of the Earth system? Yes, my short answer to that would be yes too. I started off using the term all careers only because when I talked about the idea of hooking up environmental knowledge to careers of many different sorts, people seem to instantly and instinctively gravitate back to those very few careers that we currently call environmental careers. So I started using capital all careers to remind us that we really need to have an economy made up of all green careers. But yeah, all industries, so we could have an energy industry that needs to become green. We have manufacturing that obviously needs to be green, in part probably through vast reduction of the production of goods and services. So I hope that helps just say that I agree with that, and we can state this theme in many different ways.
Great, Martin. So I know you're working currently on this in the state of Colorado, but your kind of vision is to kind of set an example here, and then have other people in other states or other parts of the country or world kind of take this and implement this in their own communities.
Yes, definitely. Right now, we're just starting to grow a little bit in Colorado, getting some foundation under us. And so the actual presentations, the kits we're producing, the content is starting small here. But I don't think there's any reason why the theme stated in maybe the best way you all here and elsewhere know how to state it couldn't and shouldn't go viral. I mean, shouldn't this go across our whole world, let alone our country, to inform how we educate our young people to produce a green economy?
Definitely. Is there anything else you'd like to cover or expand on before we wrap up the webinar? And then again, for anyone who's live on the webinar right now, feel free to send in any questions or comments you have for Martin while we're still around here.
Well, maybe I'll use this opportunity just to stress the student conference called the Climate Leadership Summit in Fort Collins, Colorado, and that those of you that are within the area could tell high schools all around the Front Range of Colorado about it. But everyone, including those far away, could draw attention to it as something that could be done in other communities. These kids really feel strongly about this. Again, they're going into their 4th year. They feel that they're kind of taking their own future in their own hands. And a big part of that right now is this theme of all careers. We have another comment from Mark. It's also important for folks in all careers to understand 2 things. It's the use of fossil energy that threatens life support systems for all species, and positive feedback loops are also critical. Yeah, well, my feedback to that is yes, the carbon production of fossil energy is a critical issue right now, of course, and it's a fairly well understood, not universally, of course, unfortunately, understood principle. But I think one thing that I go on beyond that too is that even if we do come up with very clean energy systems, we're a part of a living system, and the levels to which we use energy to transform the surface of this planet also matters. So that in the midst of the energy concern, we have the concern about the transformation of any ecosystem, whether it be desert or rainforest, to building and pavement and other things like that. And so we have to consider all aspects of how the living systems work, not just energy, as important as that is. And he mentions positive feedback loops here. Yes, positive feedback loops are important. In fact, they're part of the self-correcting mechanism of a living system if the negative feedback loops aren't working correctly. So they're very important. In terms of human systems, though, we hope that the positive feedback loop isn't catastrophic. It will correct the overbearing nature that one part of the ecosystem is having on the rest, that is ours, but it's not going to be very pleasant for us. So I want to try to avoid that particular positive feedback loop if we can.
Okay, great. If there aren't any other questions or comments, again, feel free to contact Martin explicitly. Here is his information on the screen for you guys. If you no problem. And we'll also be sending out some handouts that Martin had supplied for me. So I'll reach out to all of you with all of the content that we reviewed today for anyone who registered for the webinar, as well as with some handouts that Martin had provided to us. Do you have any other last questions or comments, Martin, for yourself or for the audience?
Just feel free to reach out to continue a conversation if you like. I did get some of your emails earlier, which was helpful, and be happy to correspond in the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Martin, for being here today and for doing this webinar for ASES, for supporting ASES and being a life member as well. And I want to remind all of you to join ASES if you haven't already, so you get free priority access to all of our webinars. And don't forget, we have one next month regarding the Solar 2019 Women in Solar Energy speakers, a recorded version of that. So be sure to register for that if you haven't already. And thank you again for joining us today. And thank you again, Martin, for presenting with us.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.